Hey, it's Ian at Really Good Thinking, home of ideas that matter. How are you doing? I'm absolutely delighted to see you for part 2 of my 3-part video chat with Michael Margolis, president of Get Storied and of GetStoried.com. Michael's all about helping us use the amazing power of story and storytelling for personal and social reinvention. I can't wait till you hear what he's got to say about our invisible lines of connection and how we can use story to help stop our ideas getting lost in translation. Here's Michael.
I think is the power of what we've done through social media. And you and I we used this, remember we used a cool little widget that allowed us to like record our voice?
Yes.
And we sent each other a little personal voicemail through Twitter.
Dude, way to rock it out on the audio boo. Inspired me to send a little message from across the pond right back at you.
Yeah. And it was like the coolest thing in the world. And then, you know, you and I have also talked separately via Skype video.
Yeah.
And part of the power of that is, you know, I got to learn about your background and your passion and the work you've been doing in both, you know, what you pioneered and then realizing, wow, you want to take it even larger and bigger out there and the book that you're working on next. And I shared with you a bit about my own background. And what we discovered in that process, Ian, were the invisible lines of connection.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the most important powers of the story process, right? Is that, you know, I come to the table with a whole, you know, bucket full of life experience and in values and beliefs, and you do too. And in the sharing a bit of who we are, we start to find where are those invisible lines of connection? Where are those places of bond?
Yeah.
And this is really important today because we live in this world of interconnectivity.
Yeah.
Where we, you know, like here we are from across the pond. We developed this little, you know, fandom friendship with each other without ever meeting in person.
Yeah.
We're still developing that. And on one hand, that's the freedom of social media.
Yeah.
But for a lot of us, that's also really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? That's the tyranny of this new freedom of like, well, geez, I can be friends with anybody. But okay, so I have, 1,500 friends on Facebook, or, you know, you have, 80,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, what's the strength of those connections? Like, are they for real? And when people are reaching out to you, like, how do you start to build a meaningful relationship? So that's why story and narrative is so powerful in that process.
Yeah.
Like, what do you find for yourself? I mean, you have a very prolific social media presence.
Yeah.
How do you find when you share parts of your own story or when other people share theirs? How does that support what you've been doing?
Well, I have everyone round for tea and cakes. So that's like 80,000 cups of tea and cakes and coffee and all that sort of stuff. So the washing up's terrible. It goes on for weeks, but it's worth it because you build relationships. For me, the whole thing of social networks and connecting with each other is that I've gone through times in my life when I've been incredibly isolated, incredibly cut off from other people, and feeling that no one around me could understand or believe or know or just even get where I'm coming from. And so, you know, fortunately I'm not in that position now because I've got family and friends and lots of people around me. But what I've found from social networks is that though these relationships are in many cases digital, they can actually translate to offline relationships as well. But even if they remain purely digital, this conversation that we're having, the conversation that we have, the relationship that we have is no less real and valuable and important. But it's about finding people who are like-minded in many ways. And that gives you a strength that you didn't have previously. Now, you can be the most popular person in the world and still not have people who are like-minded around you. So the great power of these connections is we can choose people that we have an affinity with, and we can bring mutual benefit to each other and make that spill out into the world. And that's the whole point for us, isn't it? Because you're a social entrepreneur, really.
Yep.
Your whole thing is how does this spill out and make a difference? And that's why it's exciting. These lines, these invisible lines are connections for a bigger thing. And that bigger story is, how can we rebuild the world at a time when it absolutely is on the brink of, you know, some very worrying situations? What can we do? And story is going to either take us in one direction or take us in another. It's up to us to choose.
When you were talking about, you know, those moments in your life when you felt like you were in isolation and you felt you were all alone, I mean, I was smiling and laughing because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've lived so much of my life like that.
Yeah.
And the funny reality is, for a lot of, whether you call us, whether you're a maverick, an innovator, a visionary, whatever we call ourselves, but if you're somebody who marched to the beat of your own drum, it's easy to develop and form this identity that's about separateness.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, well, geez, the existing system doesn't work. It sucks. They don't get it, But, and so, and this has been the shadow side for a lot of folks in the change-making world, including myself, right? There's a reason why am I passionate and why do I explore storytelling the way that I do? Well, it's like the old notion, we teach what we need to learn most. So I myself, Ian, I have felt lost in translation so many different ways in my life.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason why I've gotten into this work, and it's still a work in progress, but wanting to learn what are the dynamics for communicating ideas, making connection, and building tribes.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is, as you said, the irony is separation or isolation, right? It's just an illusion. I mean, in many ways, that's what we as human beings, what we do and create for ourselves, and it's a great source of suffering. It's like the movie The Matrix. I mean, there's a whole matrix of stories that are built upon each other that actually shape our perception of reality. They define the boundaries of what is real or not real, or what is possible and not possible.
Yeah.
And so it's those, and what often happens is there are certain stories that aren't supporting the future we're trying to create.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we have to go back and look at, geez, is the story I'm telling about who I am and how I see the world? Sometimes there are certain beliefs. There's usually a story that supports that belief. You can unpack the story, and by changing the story, you can change the belief.
Yeah. So this is what the Reinvention Summit, in a way, is bringing people together who are like-minded in the sense that they realise that we need new stories. My whole thing in my book is that, we've gone after all the wrong things in many respects.
Yeah.
And we can complain about that, or we can actually say, well, what are some of the right things? And how can we find stories that help us to connect with the right things? I've always really enjoyed the company of other human beings, but I don't like superficial. I still need this deeper connection. And I feel that there are many people emerging through social networks, finding each other and doing stuff together that they couldn't have done 3 or 4 years ago. And it's giving them a new lease of life and a new sense that they're not alone, that we're not alone, we are connected, and we can use this to energize each other, to actually go out there and start tackling or working with others to tackle some of the really big stuff that's going down at the moment. The old structures and systems, they try to tackle these problems, but they're tackling them from the wrong point, the wrong perspective. Story enables us to find new solutions, new ways of looking at things.
Well, yeah, because look, storytelling is our most basic human technology. And when you get good at better understanding narrative, and like I said, it's not that not all of us are people who are comfortable standing in front of an audience of thousands or bearing our souls on social media to an audience of millions, okay? Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. But what we can all become is we can develop our narrative intelligence, which is to understand the basic frameworks of story and how stories shape perception and shape relationship. And if you start to learn and discover that, you'll start to see that's a fundamental that if you learn that, everything else will start to take care of itself. Yes. Like, you can't help, but the more you become fluent in narrative, the more human we become.
Yeah.
So it's a way, as we're all searching for reclaiming our humanity, it's a really powerful way to do it.
Wow, you're telling me that is such powerful stuff. The wisdom that comes from Michael Margolis is amazing. I'm really enjoying myself. Thanks for listening to part 2. Please come back for part 3. And in the meantime, take a look at reinventionsummit.com. That's reinventionsummit.com. Bye for now.